Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unpack your sources to get you truly well-informed on today's most compelling topics. Just a quick heads up before we jump in. While AI assisted in shaping the delivery of this content, please know our script was meticulously prepared and reviewed by a dedicated cannabis science expert to ensure accuracy and scientific rigor. And today, we're plunging into a compound that's, well, it's gone from a niche health trend to something you see absolutely everywhere: CBD.
It really is everywhere, isn't it? Oils, edibles, lotions, even pet treats.
Exactly. And it seems to promise everything under the sun: stress relief, better sleep, pain management, you name it.
Yeah.
But what's really behind all that hype? Is it backed up?
That's the big question. It's a fascinating landscape, and our mission today is really to cut through that noise. We're using your sources to unpack the actual science behind cannabidiol, or CBD.
Okay.
We'll look at its real therapeutic potential, shine a light on some frankly surprising product quality issues that affect consumers right now, and also clarify its potential downsides, the adverse effects.
Right, because it's not all just miracle cure, presumably. The goal here is to arm you, our listener, with solid knowledge so you can make genuinely informed decisions about this, well, increasingly common compound.
Precisely.
So let's start right at the beginning. The absolute basics. What exactly is CBD?
Okay, let's break it down. CBD, or cannabidiol, if we're being formal, is one of over 120 naturally occurring compounds. These are called cannabinoids, and they're found in the cannabis sativa L plant.
One of many, then.
One of many. But the most crucial distinction, especially when you compare it to its famous cousin, THC.
Right, the one everyone knows.
Exactly. Is that CBD is non-intoxicating. It does not produce that euphoric psychoactive high that people associate with cannabis. That's key.
Okay, so no high, but then how does it actually work in the body? If it's not doing that, how does it produce all these other reported effects? How's it interacting with our system?
Yeah, that's where it gets really interesting, scientifically speaking. CBD primarily interacts with your body's endocannabinoid system. Think of this as a complex internal network that helps regulate a whole range of functions: mood, pain, sleep, appetite, immune response, lots of things.
Our own internal cannabis-like system, sort of.
In a way, yes. But CBD interacts with it uniquely. Unlike THC, CBD actually has a pretty low affinity for the main cannabinoid receptors, CB1 and CB2. It doesn't bind strongly to them.
So it's not like flicking the main switches like THC does. What's its approach then? Is it more subtle?
It is more subtle, yeah. Think of it less like pressing the accelerator directly and more like fine-tuning the engine. Or maybe changing how the tuttle responds when you do press it. It influences the activity of these receptors without directly activating them in the same way.
Okay.
And beyond that, CBD doesn't just target the endocannabinoid system. It has a really diverse range of molecular targets. It interacts with serotonin receptors, for instance.
Which are important for mood, right? Anxiety.
It's exactly. Crucial for mood and anxiety. It also affects other receptors, like vanilloid receptors, also called TRPV1, which are involved in sensing pain and inflammation.
And our sources mention neurotransmitters, too. It affects those as well.
It does. It also influences the reuptake, basically how quickly they're cleared away, of neurotransmitters like noradrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, and GABA.
Wow, okay. So it's really interacting all over the place.
It really is. This broad interaction with multiple systems helps explain why CBD might have such varied biological effects, and also why, the reported dose requirements and individual responses can differ so much from person to person. It's a very versatile compound, pharmacologically speaking.
That definitely paints a picture of a compound working on many different levels in the body, not just one simple mechanism.
Not at all.
So with that incredible range of biological interactions, what does the actual research say? Where is the most promising therapeutic potential for CBD right now?
Well, what's really remarkable is the sheer breadth of the preclinical findings. This is research often done in animal models or cell culture, so early stage stuff.
Right, not necessarily proven in humans yet.
Correct. But in those settings, we see CBD showing significant promise for conditions involving inflammation and pain. Think arthritis models, or even reducing neuroinflammation in Alzheimer's disease models. That's quite exciting.
Neuroinflammation, wow.
Yeah. And it also shows potential as an anti-nausea agent, antidepressant, even potentially antipsychotic effects in some studies. And intriguingly, some research suggests it has neuroprotective and antioxidative properties.
Antioxidant, like better than vitamins.
Some studies suggest it might be more effective than even vitamin C and E as a neuroprotective antioxidant in certain contexts. And there's also early work suggesting it could help with skin conditions like acne.
That's a massive list of potential benefits. Almost sounds too good to be true sometimes. But okay, moving from the lab bench to the clinic. When we talk about approved medical uses, things doctors can actually prescribe, where does CBD stand? What's really ready for prime time?
That's a really important distinction, the difference between promising early research and a fully approved medicine. Currently, there's only one form of purified CBD, marketed as Epidiolex, that is FDA and EMA approved.
Epidiolex.
And it's approved specifically for treating seizures associated with three rare, severe forms of childhood epilepsy: Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, Dravet syndrome, and tuberous sclerosis complex.
Very specific conditions, then.
Very specific, yes. And the evidence there is strong. For instance, in clinical trials for Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, almost 44% of patients treated with Epidiolex showed significant improvement in seizure frequency, compared to about 22% in the placebo group. So for these conditions, it's a recognized, effective medication.
So definitely not a general cure-all, but a targeted, approved medical use for severe epilepsy. What about other areas, though? Where else is it being seriously investigated in humans?
Beyond those specific approved uses, there are several emerging clinical applications, but the evidence levels vary quite a bit.
Okay.
For epilepsy, even outside those rare syndromes, studies show significant seizure frequency reduction in some treatment-resistant cases. One large open-label study, for example, found a median 45% reduction in seizures among 261 patients with severe epilepsy. It's often used as an add-on therapy in these difficult cases.
And what about Parkinson's disease? I feel like I've heard discussions about that too.
Yes, there's interest there. While some evidence is still anecdotal, some clinical trials have shown improvements in non-motor symptoms like cognition, depression, and emotional issues in some Parkinson's patients.
Non-motor symptoms, right.
And importantly, one study even reported a significant decrease in psychosis symptoms in some patients without making their motor symptoms worse. That's quite a big deal because traditional antipsychotics can often worsen movement control in Parkinson's.
That is significant. Okay, what about addiction? I've seen CBD mentioned in relation to substance use disorders in our sources.
That's another active area. Research suggests CBD might help reduce cravings for opioids. One study looked at heroin-dependent individuals and found CBD reduced their cravings, both in the clinic and outside.
Interesting.
However, the picture is less clear for other substance use issues. For cannabis use disorder, for example, the results have been mixed. One pilot study actually found an increase in cannabis use in the group taking CBD, which was unexpected.
Oh, really? An increase? That's surprising.
It highlights that we need more research to understand exactly how and when CBD might be helpful or not in addiction. It's complex.
Definitely complex. And schizophrenia, that seems like another area where traditional treatments have significant side effects.
Right. And there are studies suggesting CBD might help alleviate psychotic symptoms. One trial actually compared CBD directly to a standard antipsychotic drug, amsulpride.
Yeah.
It found that CBD had a better side effect profile. Things like less increase in serum prolactin, fewer movement-related side effects, extrapyramidal symptoms, and less weight gain. That's potentially very beneficial, given how tough the side effects of traditional antipsychotics can be for patients.
That is certainly promising. And quickly, what about those broader areas like general inflammation and cancer? Always big topics.
Well, in animal models, CBD definitely shows immunomodulatory effects. It affects how the immune system works in diseases like multiple sclerosis, arthritis, and diabetes. For cancer, again, preclinical studies in animals show some anti-invasive and anti-tumor effects.
Meaning it might stop spread or shrink tumors?
In some animal models, yes, it would reduce metastatic nodules and tumor volume. And notably, it seemed to do this without the typical harsh side effects of chemotherapy, like vomiting or broader toxicity. But again, this is early stage, mostly animal research. We're a long way from CBD being a cancer treatment in humans.
Okay, so summing up the potential. Strong evidence for specific rare epilepsies, exciting research in Parkinson's, psychosis, maybe addiction, inflammation. But a lot still needs rigorous human trials.
Exactly. The potential is broad. But the path from a promising lab finding to an approved, safe, and effective treatment is long and very demanding.
Which actually leads us perfectly into a major challenge facing CBD right now.
Yeah.
The state of the actual products people are buying over the counter. The quality seems questionable.
Questionable is putting it mildly. Your sources reveal what one flat out calls a scandal in the market.
A scandal? That's strong language.
It is. But listen to this conclusion from one source. Basically, all available CBD products based on hemp extract marketed as food or food supplement within the EU are therefore illegally sold.
Illegally sold? Why?
Because they're considered unapproved novel foods under EU regulations. And a major part of this scandal is the systematic high level of delta-9 THC found in many products. We're talking levels that exceed acceptable toxicity thresholds.
So people might be getting more THC than they expect or is safe in a product they think is just CBD.
Precisely. And it's not just THC contamination. It's also about whether the CBD content itself is accurate. The mislabeling is widespread and, frankly, quite alarming.
Give us some numbers. How bad is this mislabeling?
Okay, get this. In Ireland, a study found that a staggering 92% of tested CBD products had more than a 10% difference between the CBD content measured in the lab and what was actually stated on the label.
Wow. Almost all of them are off.
Almost all. And it's not just Ireland. In the UK, another study found only 38% of products were within 10% of their advertised CBD content. So more often than not, what you think you're buying isn't what you're actually getting in the bottle.
That's bad enough, but the THC contamination, that sounds like the bigger safety risk, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That's where the safety concerns really ramp up. In that Irish study, 37% of the products exceeded the safe daily THC dosage limit set by ESA, the European Food Safety Authority. That limit is tiny, just 1 microgram per kilogram of body weight per day.
So nearly 40% had potential unsafe THC levels.
Yes. And in Belgium, about half of the products seized by authorities exceeded a 0.2% THC plus THCA threshold. In the UK, 55% of products had measurable THC. Even in a U.S. study, 3 out of 25 products had detectable THC.
What does this mean overall? Who's responsible?
It means, according to one source, that manufacturers have, quote, deliberately or in complete ignorance of the legal situation, put unsafe and unapproved products onto the market. And this exposes consumers like you to, quote, an actually avoidable risk.
It sounds like a regulatory black hole, almost.
It largely is. Many products are described as unregulated nutraceutical blends sold without any real clinical evaluation. And despite this perception of CBD as natural medicine, its derivatives are often extracted using industrial processes, sometimes even synthetically modified.
And the official bodies aren't confident either.
No. The European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, stated that the safety of CBD as a novel food cannot currently be established because there are just too many significant uncertainties and data gaps. Plus, there are issues like CBD potentially degrading during storage, which could also make the label inaccurate over time.
So we have this huge market, massive popularity, but the products themselves are often mislabeled, sometimes contaminated with THC, technically illegal in some places, and regulators say safety isn't established.
That sums it up pretty well. It's a messy situation.
Which leads directly to the question of side effects or adverse effects. CBD is often marketed as very safe, natural, but what does the actual scientific data show? Is it truly harmless?
It's true that CBD generally is considered to have a favorable safety profile. It's usually well tolerated, and most adverse effects reported are mild or moderate.
Okay, so that part isn't entirely hype.
Not entirely. However, and this is a big correction, it's crucial to understand that CBD is not biologically inert. It's not like drinking water. It has a complex pharmacological profile, just like any other medication, and it absolutely can have side effects.
Especially at higher doses, I imagine, or with other meds.
Exactly. Dose matters, and interactions matter. It's not inert.
So what are the most common things people might experience, the side effects that pop up most often in studies?
The most commonly reported issues are definitely gastrointestinal symptoms. In some clinical trials, these affected up to nearly 60% of users.
60%? Wow. Like what?
Things like diarrhea, that's a big one. Around 32% in some studies. Nausea, vomiting, and abdominal pain. So tummy troubles are common.
Okay. What else?
Another frequent category involves the central nervous system. Things like somnolence, which is basically drowsiness or sleepiness, reported in up to 25% of patients in clinical trials. General sedation and fatigue are also commonly observed. And these effects are often dose-dependent.
Meaning the more you take, the sleepier you might get.
Generally, yes. Higher doses are more likely to cause drowsiness.
What about appetite? I feel like I've heard conflicting things. Does it make you hungry or suppress appetite?
The data is actually pretty inconclusive on that. Both decreased appetite and increased appetite have been reported, as well as both weight loss and weight gain. There doesn't seem to be a clear, consistent trend overall. It might vary a lot between individuals.
Interesting. Any other common ones?
Rash has been reported in about 6.4% of CBD users in some trials. And it seems it can be directly related to the CBD itself, not just other medications being taken alongside it. Also, insomnia and other sleep disruptions have been noted, although perhaps less consistently or less frequently than drowsiness.
Okay, so those are the more common, generally milder things. Diarrhea, drowsiness, maybe appetite changes, rash. But are there more serious side effects? Things that are rarer, perhaps, or mainly seen in specific situations?
Yes, there are. And it's important to note that most of these serious adverse effects are rare and have primarily been observed in those clinical trials for epilepsy, where patients are often taking high doses of CBD alongside other potent anti-epileptic drugs.
Right, so context is key. What's the main serious concern?
The most frequent reason people actually had to stop taking CBD in those trials was something called hypertransaminasemia.
Hypertransaminasemia, what's that?
It basically means elevated liver enzymes, indicating potential liver stress or injury. This happened in about 8 to 16% of patients, depending on the dose, and led to liver enzyme levels rising more than 3 times the upper limit of normal in roughly 6.4% of patients in some key studies.
Liver injury. That sounds serious. Why does CBD affect the liver?
It seems related to how CBD is metabolized, and it highlights the need for caution. You need to be particularly careful if CBD is taken with other medications known to potentially cause liver issues like certain other antiepileptics, some antipsychotics, even high doses of acetaminophen or Tylenol.
So mixing it could be risky for the liver.
Potentially, yes, especially for people who already have liver problems. And it's worth noting, even 300 milligrams per day of CBD taken on its own has been linked to increased liver enzymes in some smaller studies. So it's not just about interactions.
Okay. Liver enzymes. What else serious showed up in those trials?
Well, seizures themselves were reported as a serious adverse event in about 1.3% of participants, which is perhaps counterintuitive since it's used to treat seizures.
Yeah, that is odd.
And there was also an increased risk, about a 5 times higher odds ratio for developing pneumonia in people taking CBD in some studies, particularly in the childhood epilepsy trials.
Pneumonia. Why would CBD lead to pneumonia?
The thinking is that it's likely linked to that increased sedation and drowsiness we talked about. If someone is heavily sedated, their risk of accidentally inhaling food or liquid into their lungs, aspiration goes up, and that can lead to pneumonia.
Ah, okay. That makes sense as an indirect effect. So beyond these direct side effects, however rare, what about how CBD interacts with other medications people might be taking? You mentioned the liver enzyme issue.
This is a huge area of concern, possibly one of the most critical takeaways for anyone considering using CBD, especially if you're on any other medication.
Why is it so critical?
Because CBD is a potent inhibitor of certain key liver enzymes, particularly ones called CYP450 enzymes, like CYP334 and CYP2C19.
Okay, enzyme names. What do they actually do?
Think of these enzymes as the body's main drug processing machinery. They're responsible for breaking down a massive chunk. Estimates range from 30% to maybe even 60% of all commonly prescribed medications.
Wow. So they handle a lot of traffic.
A huge amount. We're talking many antiepileptics like clobazam and valproate, which are often used with CBD in those epilepsy trials. Also immunosuppressants, cholesterol-lowering statins, many antidepressants. The list is long.
So if CBD inhibits these enzymes, what happens to those other drugs?
It's like putting up a roadblock for that drug processing machinery. CBD slows the enzymes down. And if another drug relies on those enzymes to be broken down and cleared from the body,
the levels will go up.
Exactly. The levels of the co-administered drug can build up in your system, sometimes dramatically. And that can lead to enhanced side effects or even outright toxicity from the other drug.
Can you give an example?
A classic one is with clobazam, that anti-seizure medication. CBD can increase the levels of clobazam's active metabolite by anywhere from 2 to 7 times. 7-fold increase.
7 times? That's huge.
It is. And that massive increase is thought to be a major contributor to the significant sedation seen when they're used together, and probably contributes to that increased pneumonia risk we mentioned, likely due to respiratory depression from the high clobazam levels.
So the interaction itself causes problems. Is it just prescription drugs? What about over-the-counter stuff?
Good question. It's not just the CYP enzymes. In vitro studies, lab studies show CBD also inhibits other enzyme systems called UGT enzymes, which are also important for clearing drugs from the body.
And what relies on those?
These enzymes help clear common medications like acetaminophen, Tylenol, and ibuprofen. So inhibiting them could potentially lead to higher levels of those drugs too.
Meaning potentially more side effects from Tylenol or Advil.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
For instance, a higher risk of bleeding with NSAIDs like ibuprofen if their levels get too high. And it goes further. Even CBD's main inactive metabolite, something called 7-CoH-CBD, can inhibit drug transporters.
Transporters, what do they do?
They help move drugs out of tissues and into excretion pathways like bile or urine. If these are inhibited, It can affect the distribution and side effects of drugs like statins again, the heart medication digoxin, and certain diabetes medications.
Wow. So the interactions are really complex and potentially widespread.
They absolutely are. It affects absorption, metabolism, distribution, excretion, multiple steps.
One more interaction question. What about CBD and THC? Does CBD counteract THC, or what's the story there? I feel like people assume it does.
Yeah, that's a common belief, that CBD always dampens the high from THC. But the actual research is a bit controversial and more nuanced. Some studies suggest that low-dose CBD, the kind you might find in food supplements, could actually enhance some effects of THC.
Enhance them? Really?
Especially in people who don't use cannabis very often. So it's not always a simple counterbalance. It might depend on the dose, the ratio, and the individual. It's another complexity. All of this, the potential effects, the side effects, the quality issues, the complex interactions, brings us to a really powerful quote mentioned in one of your sources. This is from Dr. Paul Patcher, a well-respected cannabis researcher.
Okay, what did he say?
He stated that, quote, "Currently, CBD users must be aware that they may be participating in one of the largest uncontrolled clinical trials in history."
Wow. The largest uncontrolled clinical trial in history. That's quite a statement.
It really is, and it perfectly captures the current reality. A market where millions of people are taking pharmacologically active doses of a compound, often without any medical supervision, without verified product quality, and without a full understanding of the potential risks or interactions.
That really puts it into perspective. So after diving deep into all this, what's the bottom line? What does all this mean for you, our listener, trying to navigate this?
I think the bottom line is that CBD is genuinely fascinating. It clearly has therapeutic potential, backed by strong evidence for certain specific conditions and exciting preliminary evidence for others. But there are very significant concerns you can't ignore. The quality control and regulatory oversight in the general market are, frankly, often abysmal. It's a huge issue.
Right, the mislabeling, the THC.
Exactly. And as we've just discussed at length, CBD isn't inert. It has its own potential adverse effects, and maybe more importantly, it has complex and clinically significant interactions with many other common medications. These risks seem to increase with higher doses, but interactions can happen even at lower doses.
So it's this real duality, promise on one hand, pitfalls on the other.
Precisely.
This deep dive really highlights that. So thinking about the often unregulated nature of the market and the science that's still evolving, what does this really mean for you, the listener, and the choices you might make about CBD? What critical questions should you be asking if you're considering a CBD product? And maybe most importantly, how can you try to ensure your own safety in this, rapidly expanding and sometimes confusing landscape?
I think it really underscores the need to be an active, critical, and informed consumer. Don't just grab the first product you see. Ask questions. Look for brands that provide third-party lab results, certificates of analysis or COAs confirming the CBD and THC content.
That's crucial, checking the actual content.
Absolutely. And crucially, talk to your doctor or a qualified healthcare professional before starting CBD, especially if you are taking any other medications, even over-the-counter ones, or if you have any underlying health conditions, particularly liver issues.
Don't just assume natural means safe or no side effects.
Exactly. Don't assume natural means safe, and certainly don't assume unregulated means harmless. Do your homework. Prioritize your health and safety above the hype.
That's excellent advice. Be critical, be informed, talk to your doctor.
That's the key.
Well, thank you for guiding us through that complex world. Hopefully this deep dive into CBD has armed you with the information needed to make those informed decisions, and as always, to stay curious. Join us next time as we take a deep dive into another fascinating topic.